Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, I'm privileged to welcome a very senior professional manager, Shekar Vishwanathan. Shekar, welcome to the show. Shekar, till recently, was the vice chairman of Toyota Kirloskar. He has spent time with Haldia Petrochemicals, with Lazar Brothers, Chase Manhattan Bank, and the Unit Trust of India. And he's very passionate about golf, bridge, and swimming. So, Shekhar, tell me, what would you say are three key milestones in your career or your life?
The career part is a little more tough to pick because I've had challenges all through.
We all have, absolutely.
But I can certainly tell you a little more about my life, and
Sure.
life's teachings has been more valuable to me.
Okay.
And in the progression of my career also, I would think. The first is, of course, a very sad incident that happened when I was very young, when I was all of 15 years of age. I lost my dad to an air accident.
Okay.
So that was a big setback. But it also does teach you a lot about life and teaches you about how to come to terms with something as cataclysmic as that.
Correct.
And of course, I think I have matured over the years with that experience and dealing with people and learning to make certain sacrifices. At the same time, I must tell you that I think the world has also been a very good place to me. So that was one.
Okay.
The one which had a more direct bearing on my career, so to speak, or my knowledge of finance, or the more practical knowledge of finance was, I sold some property which I should not have sold, but that was partly driven by economics. And then the moment I sold it, I realized that was a disastrous decision.
Okay.
And then I made one more disastrous decision of trying to build a house for myself.
Okay.
And then I realized that the capital disappears pretty quickly.
I agree.
So and an incomplete project is as good as not having started it at all. And then in fact you are poorer for it. So I had a house which didn't have banisters, which didn't have any painting. But luckily I got to the stage where we had a roof over our heads and the electricity connection.
Right.
But these are all, practical examples of how to manage your finances, both on the personal level and at a corporate level.
Correct.
As to what is, these are the fundamental building blocks, if you can, call it that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, the third, definite career progression that happened was, two things actually, and these were in my formative years. One was, of course, when I was with the Unit Trust of India. I think we had a large number of deputationists from the Reserve Bank of India. And, order and method is what they taught us. It may have sounded very bureaucratic to some, but I do think that any organization needs that kind of discipline, which the Reserve Bank of India had, or even still now has.
Sure.
And I think I'm the richer for it.
Fabulous.
There have been many people who have taught me many things, and therefore that was very useful. The other thing was with the Chase Manhattan Bank, where I thought that all that was there to a company was its balance sheet. How wrong I was. They sent me for credit training to Hong Kong, where they normally do send their staffers.
Sure.
And for me, it was a huge learning because I couldn't afford to do an MBA. And it was a huge learning from the point of view of assessing a company, a group of companies, not just in terms of their balance sheet and P&L, but in terms of the business, their marketing strategy, what kind of financial products you'll fashion for them, how you will price them, and how will you identify the different risks. And I think that was a huge learning for me.
Correct.
And then in many ways it transformed me. Maybe it made me even more arrogant, that I kind of suddenly knew everything, which I didn't.
Okay.
But anyway, as you grow,
Fabulous.
you learn,
Hmm.
and you learn that you have
So,
to.
after spending so many years in the financial world, if I can say, Unit Trust, Chase Manhattan, Lazard, you moved out of that into industry and then into automobiles. Tell me about that journey.
Okay, I would like to tell you
Hmm.
that it was all planned. But let me tell you, nothing can be further from the truth.
Okay.
It was not planned at all,
Okay. Okay.
but it was driven more by circumstance.
Hmm.
Um, I had got to a stage where, by the time I joined Haldia Petrochemicals,
Hmm.
I had seen enough of both domestic and international finance.
Hmm.
That was a project that called for about $1.4 billion in financing.
Hmm.
And I had both the opportunity and the goodwill
Hmm.
to make that happen in part. Of
Okay.
course, obviously supported by everybody else.
Sure.
It got to a stage where Calcutta was very welcoming of me as an individual,
Okay.
but I felt at that stage that my family wouldn't be able to settle down there,
Hmm.
and my wife, she had a good job going over here,
Hmm.
and the children were in school. So I said, I've got to make a choice. Either it's my career
Hmm.
or it's my family, and I chose the
Correct.
family.
Very good.
So, but obviously, I didn't want to come to I didn't want it to be a kind of jailbreak
Hmm.
out of Calcutta.
Hmm.
I wanted to come to a good job,
Hmm.
and in this respect, my boss in Calcutta, the Chatterjee Group,
Hmm.
Dr. Purnindu Chatterjee
Hmm.
and his
Hmm.
team, they helped me find a suitable assignment here.
Hmm. Okay.
They did introduce me to Mr. Vikram Kirloskar,
Hmm.
and the rest is history, as they
Rest
say.
of the say is history. Very good. So that's a great segue to my next segment, which is Toyota Kirloskar. My first question to you is, and it's a more generic question. What is it about cars that gets adrenaline and hormone levels up so much?
Well, let me tell you, for me,
Hmm.
it doesn't get my adrenaline levels up at all.
Okay.
In terms of its styling, its
Ah.
comfort, its luxuries, its technology, etc. Because I mean, I do appreciate it, but I don't. It doesn't really drive me. But let me
Hmm.
tell you what drives me.
Hmm.
And because I'm a student of economics as well, I did my graduation in
Hmm.
economics, and I've
Hmm.
been following the world economy and the Indian economy. Almost everywhere I find that it's the auto sector that drives the economy.
Hmm.
And in this respect, for a manufacturer,
Hmm.
it's the amount of profit per car,
Correct.
and that's a very very important metric.
Hmm.
For the government, it's the amount of taxes per car
Hmm.
that they can raise,
Hmm.
because it's a very important component that feeds into their budget.
Correct.
For the individual,
Hmm.
it's the kilometers per liter, or
Correct.
or the usage of the car
Hmm.
that will
Hmm.
take him
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
So I find that the car industry,
Hmm.
generally the automobile industry, but particularly the car and two-wheeler industry, drives the population.
Hmm.
It creates jobs, which is a very very important metric
Hmm.
for anybody who's attempting to steer the economy.
Hmm.
And in this respect, I think the Golden Quadrilateral, when Prime Minister Vajpayee announced it,
Hmm.
was a boon to India.
Hmm.
And I do think that kind of set the stage for a takeoff of the automobile sector.
Hmm.
So, in terms of adrenaline, I want to be very, very clear with you and with everybody that what drives me is these parameters and these metrics.
So it does get your economic adrenaline up then.
Yes,
Okay,
indeed.
fair enough. So let's talk Toyota. I mean, this is an organization that has always fascinated me from the outside. I mean, I own Toyota cars here, overseas. What do you do differently in Toyota that makes you the market leader everywhere?
Well, there are lots of people who would say we're not the market leader in India, and that's a
Hmm.
fact.
Okay.
But
Well, I'm going to leave Suzuki out of it,
okay,
because they've been here forever.
yeah. No, I think it's fair to say that Toyota is a market leader almost everywhere.
Correct.
In India, of course, we have not had the kind of success, but that's for a variety of reasons. Not can't blame the Indian market. You cannot blame Toyota. Toyota is geared to make the bigger cars. The Indian market's tax structure is weighted toward the
Small cars.
small car segment. So, but if you observe, even in a country like India, if you look at the multi-utility vehicle segment, Innova is by far the leader.
Absolutely.
Okay, and in certain segments, when the Corolla was here, we were leading that segment. So there are segments we lead, and those are the cars we make. Now, lots of people say, why can't Toyota make a small car? And my response to that is, he's making a small car, so I should make a small car. I mean, that's not the way Toyota thinks.
Correct.
We'd like to bring certain value propositions to the market. And I think when we introduced the Qualis in India, there was even an editorial which suggested that Toyota brings outdated technology.
Correct.
Okay, but by the time we were ready to phase it out, people were asking, why are you taking away such a good car?
Absolutely.
And it was a rage.
Yeah.
Even today, lots of people say we made a big mistake by not continuing with that car.
Absolutely.
But it's a longer story, longer than the 30 minutes that you allotted.
Absolutely. No, I remember.
But let me tell you the other two reasons why I think Toyota is a success globally. One is they've been able to build volume on the back of quality. Okay, and having built that volume begets volume, and it gives you control over your pricing structure, and therefore you're able to price that much more accurately. It also gives you a little bit of leeway in terms of dollars spent, in terms of advertising, etc. So there has been a judicious mix of how much you spend on the marketing dollar, and how much you spend towards building the product. And ultimately, it's the customer who counts. It's not the government, it's not the manufacturer, it's not your supply chain, it's the customer. He makes the decision, he votes with his wallet.
Okay. So, now let's talk about what's happening in the auto industry. And one major change that seems to be happening is electronic vehicles. Where does Toyota stand on this? And where do you, as a senior auto professional, stand on this?
Okay, let me first tell you where Toyota stands on this. I mean, this is something that may not be very well known, but at one stage, Tesla had partnered with Toyota to build electric vehicles, and they were successfully built. They built, I think, a mix of both electric and hybrid. At that point, there came a break in that relationship, where Tesla felt that they had to go electric. Toyota felt they could go electric and hybrid. And therefore, they went their respective ways. Toyota has a slew of electric vehicle products, which are being launched even as we speak in different markets around the world. But I don't want to jump the gun, because they would have launched some of these products at the Tokyo Olympics, and the products like transportation vehicle, which is called the e-pallet, which you can see it on the Toyota website, are products that they were ready to launch. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic and the COVID, the Olympics got postponed. But all that said, I think Toyota completely understands the place of electric vehicles and the overall mobility panorama. And I think they know what it takes to make an electric vehicle. The short answer is anybody can make an electric vehicle. But how many can make a success of an electric vehicle as a business model?
Correct. Yes.
That is the challenge that Toyota has. And Toyota, by nature being conservative, will go in steadily into each market. And let me tell you, they have some wonderful products.
I'm sure.
Sure. So that's where they stand on electric vehicles.
Okay.
My own personal take on this, as far as India is concerned, is we need to encourage all forms of mobility, all tech forms. It can be electric, it can be hybrid, it can be hydrogen, it can be pure gasoline. Today, crude prices are on the boil, and therefore petrol prices are going up, and therefore there will be a shift towards electric vehicles. But there will come a time when crude oil prices go down, and therefore the shift will then take place again towards hybrid and certainly towards gasoline vehicles. Now, the important point to understand is, unlike in the United States, where people are typically own 2 to 3 cars, and one of them will always be and could always be an electric vehicle. In India, we don't have that kind of luxury.
Correct.
You buy one vehicle, and that has to serve all your needs. And therefore, there is an inbuilt limitation in the market space for electric vehicles. Of course, the usual other arguments are there. There's lack of charging infrastructure. Where are you going to get your lithium and other rare earth materials from? These are topics for a much bigger debate, which I'm happy to do, but not in this forum.
I agree with you. And so one more question from a market perspective. The younger people, the millennials and the Gen Zs, are changing the paradigm for the brands all over the world. What are the millennials and Gen Zs doing the car business in India? They're not buying.
Well, I think there are quite a few things that have happened. One is, of course, the advent of Uber, Ola, etc., shared mobility and things like that, which is a good development because it just helps you make better use of your assets, whether it's owned in the public domain or in the private domain. If it's owned more in the public domain, then, of course, the revenues to the government will fall. If it's owned in the private domain, the revenues to the government will be secured. But then how many people can then afford it?
Correct.
And today the youngsters don't see a car as a status symbol the way we aspired for it when we were much younger.
Absolutely right. Yes.
Okay, but that's how it is, and you have to accept it. But there's one other aspect that's impacting the car market.
Okay.
And that is the advent of the internet. Today, a customer is able to see what car he wants, see all the features, everything. So he's kind of already made up his mind to buy a particular vehicle before he walks into the showroom. And when he walks into the showroom, as long as he confirms that those features are what stated in the website and in the videos that he sees and the commentaries that's written and in the social media, he's already made his decision. This is not the case earlier where, cultivating a customer only began by footfalls in the showroom.
Okay.
There's another development that I would like to just articulate very quickly, and this has been actually pioneered to some extent by Tesla. They didn't have dealerships. Now, they said we will sell direct to the customer. Now, that's another business model that's in the offing. And with the internet, that could gain more traction globally. It has two impacts. One is on the employment, because then you don't need all these showrooms. And if you don't need these showrooms, you need some showrooms and workshops. But if that number halves, then think what will happen to the real estate space. So, it's got more ramifications than can be discussed in this.
Absolutely. I agree. So I've got time now for a few questions. Let me ask you the next question, which is, as someone who spent so much time in industry and so much time in manufacture, what are some of the core values you believe in?
Well, I think loyalty is one. I think you must be loyal to the cause. And when somebody may recruits you, for example, and they say we are hiring you for this purpose, I think you should also be wedded to the objective of the organization. And I think that's something that's very valuable to the organization concerned.
Okay.
Because otherwise the whole planning process gets vitiated, particularly staffing, human resources, etc. And I think I put a lot of faith by loyalty in this sense. Now, you can't take loyalty to the other extreme and say, even if the boss says
Jump
do
off.
unspeakable things, you do it. That's not the kind of loyalty I'm
I'm with
talking
you
about.
completely. I'm with you.
Loyalty to the objective, loyalty to finishing a project,
Correct.
loyalty to timelines.
Mm.
That's what I mean.
Very well said. So, Shekhar, I've got time for two, maybe three questions for you personally now. For someone who has seen, so much in the last, I'm assuming 4 decades, because I think you and I are the same vintage. Uh, from where you stand today, what does success mean to you?
Well, well, that's a very, very difficult question. In fact,
It is. That's why
I
I'm
had
asking
to
you.
I had to do a lot of thinking on this.
Hmm.
See, success to me means when somebody seeks out your opinion
Hmm.
and doesn't take your advice.
Hmm.
Uh, to me, that is success, because the very fact that he's reached out to you, got your opinion, he
Hmm.
may disagree with you.
Okay.
To me, that is success,
I
because
must tell you, this is the first time I've heard this, and it makes so much sense. Someone who reaches out to you but does not take your advice.
yes, and
Wow.
I've had that happen to me quite a few times. In fact,
Okay.
oftentimes.
Hmm.
Uh, in some cases, I've been proved right. In some cases, I've been proven wrong.
Okay.
But that's not the point. The point is that when somebody has reached out to you, that means they respect you, they value your judgment,
Hmm.
your opinion, and I think these are the things that, to me, defines success in either
Fantastic.
your career or your life or your interactions with society.
Fantastic. And a follow up question from that is that who or what inspires you?
Okay, let me tell you, I am not inspired by any one individual in toto.
Sure.
Meaning I
Hmm.
don't hero worship and I don't
Sure.
encourage that.
Sure.
But there are several individuals throughout my career
Hmm.
who have inspired me by the way they have handled situations,
Hmm.
by the way they have reacted,
Hmm.
by the way they have handled other human beings, and by the values they have practiced.
Hmm.
Now, in all cases, the individuals concerned, there are some practices that they've adopted which I did not definitely approve of, but that doesn't mean that they are wrong in every respect.
Hmm.
In some respects, they've been very good examples to follow.
Hmm.
So you take the good from whoever you come across.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that has been the way I have sought to inspire myself and to
Wonderful.
keep myself on track.
Wonderful. My next question to you, Shekhar, is on failure. And I love asking this question. I have a new book coming out on failure next month. I've always had this hypothesis that parents in India or South Asia don't teach children it's okay to fail. And that manifests itself in our behavior patterns because we've been taught first Tana hai, head of the queue, etc., etc. Yet we fail and we learn. My question to you is what have been some of your learnings from some of your mistakes?
Well, I've obviously made mistakes,
Yeah.
in my life, and
Mm.
obviously I have, particularly in the initial part of my life,
Mm.
uh, my interpersonal skills were not what it ought to have been.
Mm-hmm.
But I diligently practiced it,
Mm.
and I sought to improve relationships, not just with my bosses or my subordinates,
Mm.
but also with your peer group.
Mm.
So you've got to be able to manage downward, manage upward, manage sideward.
Mm.
That's my
Okay.
answer.
Okay. Great answer. My next question, that's my last question, is that this is for the thousands of young people who will listen to all your words of wisdom. For someone who has risen it all right to the very top, what would you advise some young individuals who are starting off on their corporate career?
Yeah, I think this is another question that I think is it's a very important one.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I learned, and the inspiration question that you asked me,
Hmm.
I have seen some of my seniors,
Hmm.
the way they would command resources.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if there was a polymer engineer who was required
Hmm.
to be drawn into the organization,
Hmm.
I remember the managing director of one of the companies where I was. He would just pick up the phone, talk to somebody, and say, "Is so and so free to join us? Can you check with him?" And sure enough, that gentleman would call back and say, "Yes, if you're there, sir, I will join." And so the why I'm relating the story at some in some depth and length is because my advice to the younger folk is build a team. The team may not be with you all through your life.
Correct.
But they will be in different organizations. They may be in different functions. They may be in different continents. But they will come to your help when you need it.
Wonderful.
And when you assume a position of responsibility, you can't go around building a team from scratch.
Correct.
You should have a team ready-made. Also, in an organization, in fact, this is something I advise to a lot of my younger colleagues in Toyota and elsewhere. Build a team in the organization itself so that when you go to the next level of responsibility, these people are loyal to you, loyal to the cause, and you're able to get the best out of them.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Shekar, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for such a vast range of answers to all my questions. And thank you for sharing such amazing experiences. I wish you lots of luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ashutosh.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.